Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be making a strikingly beautiful cheese in the style of Nerina. Nerina translates to little black one, and this Italian goat milk cheese is called that because of the ash layer that coats it. The Nerina isn't aged very long, generally only 2 to 3 weeks, so it's going to produce a milder flavored cheese which can easily win over even the most skeptical of goat cheese critics. Let me show you how we made it. The first thing we need to do is prepare our goat milk, and we don't really have to do anything special to the goat milk other than heat it up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius. And I went ahead and did that on the stovetop very gently. You don't want to heat it up too fast, and our temperature is now 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Once we hit our temperature, we're now going to begin to add our cultures and our mold. This is a mesophilic culture, MM100, which is going to give our Nerina a beautiful flavor, slightly buttery. And we're just going to sprinkle that directly on top. And now we're going to add our molds. We're using a combination of molds. This first one is Penicillium candidum. This is going to give us that really nice bloomy rind. And we're going to come back with another mold called Geotrichum candidum. And these are good molds to use in conjunction with each other. The Geotrichum is going to form a nice surface mold on the rind itself, and it's going to allow that Penicillium candidum to adhere better. So once you have your molds and your cultures on your milk, put a 3-minute timer and allow your cultures to rehydrate basically. And once that 3 minutes is up, it's time to add your calcium chloride. If you're using raw goat's milk, you don't need to add calcium chloride. So once you get your calcium chloride added, go ahead and stir well with an up and down motion for 5 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and set a 5-minute timer and continue stirring. Once this 5 minutes is up, we're now going to add our liquid rennet. And we're only going to be adding about 4 drops per gallon diluted in some distilled water. We're not adding a lot of rennet to this recipe because we want the heavy lifting to be done by the mesophilic culture. This is going to be what they call a lactic set curd. So once you add your rennet, stir for 60 seconds with an up and down motion. And once you've mixed that well for 1 minute, go ahead and cover your milk and leave it on your countertop. A lactic set curd needs to ferment slowly in order for it to produce the right texture. So we don't want this to develop too much acid too quickly. So we're going to leave this on our countertop for anywhere between 16 to 24 hours. And the temperature in our room is 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. What we're looking for is a target pH of 4.5 to 4.6. If you notice that your milk is acidifying too quickly, the next time you make this recipe, just reduce the amount of starter culture that you add. Our milk has been fermenting for about 20 hours, and the temperature in our kitchen is about 74 degrees, a little warmer than I'd like. Notice how the curd mass has sunk to the bottom, and there's about an inch of whey on top. So it's time to test our pH. If you're doing this for the first time and you have a pH meter, start testing the pH at around 12 hours just to gauge where you're at. Now, testing the pH is not necessary, although you will produce a better quality, more consistent cheese if you do test the pH. So we're going to be using our Apera Instruments pH meter. And remember, we're looking for anything between 4.5 and 4.6. Looks like we're good. We got the little smiley face, 4.52. So let's go ahead and take our curd and put it into its mold. So there's a couple things you can do here. What I like to do on this very first filling is put a cheesecloth. You don't technically have to. If you've made this cheese right, you won't need a cheesecloth at all. But I like the cheesecloth method because it allows you to flip the first time very easily. So I'm just going to line our 1-pound molds with some cheesecloth that's been sanitized, and we're going to gently ladle out our curd in thin layers. You don't want chunks of curd in your mold. You want even thin layers throughout. And once you fill up your mold, just wait 5 minutes. That curd will settle, giving you more space to add more curd to the top. And continue doing this until you're all out of curd. Once you're finished, go ahead and place some cheesecloth or a bamboo mat on top of your molds, and this is just going to protect your cheese while it's draining. And at this point, we wait. This is the stage where our curds are going to drain. They're going to knit together well. So I'm going to set a 5-hour timer, And in 5 hours, I'm going to come back to the cheese and flip it. This cheese is going to drain for about 24 hours. And during that 24-hour period, you're really only going to flip it 2 or 3 times. You want to try to keep the room temperature at about 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And let me show you what the first flip is going to look like after about 5 hours. So the first thing you'll notice is the curd mass reduction, right? As this is losing weight and it's compressing under its own weight, it's going to reduce in size. And here you get to see why I like using this cheesecloth method on the first flip. You can easily pull it out. So we just pulled it right out of that mold. We're unwrapping it. And what we want is for the top of that cheese to be now at the bottom of that mold, but our cheese is incredibly delicate. So we're going to take that mold and put it on top of our cheese and then just flip the cheese into it. And that's how we make the first flip. Now, you technically don't need a cheesecloth to do that. And if you've made this recipe properly, your cheese should have enough structure to do it without a cheesecloth. But a cheesecloth provides just a little bit of insurance, especially if this is the first time you're making this cheese. So we're going to go ahead and put that mold on the second one, flip the cheese right on into it. And there we go. So I don't need the cheesecloth anymore. We're going to lose that. And we're just going to loosely cover our cheese molds with some cling film or some saran wrap, and that's not only going to keep the critters away, but it's also going to lock in some of that humidity. At this point, we're going to leave it on our counter for another 8 hours or so, and this is what it's going to look like 8 hours later. So we're 13 hours into the draining process. You're going to notice that your cheese is definitely starting to take a better shape. It's starting to firm up, although it's still going to be very soft. You'll be able to easily pop your cheese out of the mold, as you'll see me do right here, and notice that it has a lot more structural integrity. So at this point, we're just going to make sure that we flip it and then place it right back into our mold. It's very creamy at this stage, so you don't want to mess with it too much. But once you get it back into the mold, set it to the side and do the other one. So this is the second flip. The third flip I'll probably do at around 20 hours, and then that'll be it. So just remember, don't overflip this particular cheese. 2 to 3 times is all you need. And once you're done flipping, it's time to salt and ash your cheese. I'm not a big fan of the teaspoon method when it comes to salting your cheese because everyone's results can be a little different. So for me, what we're looking for is a 2% salt content with your cheese. And what that means is after 24 hours of your cheese drying, you're going to remove it from the mold and place it on a scale. I put a plate on the scale that's been sanitized, and I just zeroed out the scale at that point. So once you put your cheese on the scale, mine's measuring out to 681 grams. Record that weight and then multiply it by 2%. That's going to be how much salt you add to the recipe. So 681 grams times 2% equals 13.62 grams of salt, and that's what I'm weighing out right here. So we're just going to take that salt, and we're going to use 100% of that salt to sprinkle all over our cheese. So we're just going to put it on the top and then gently rub it on the sides. We don't want to spill any of this salt. We want to use 100% of it. I'll wait about 5 or 6 hours, and then I'll do the other side. And once my cheese has been salted, it's time to ash our cheese. And there's a lot of different ways to apply ash to your cheese, most of which are incredibly messy. I've found that this dust sprayer, although not perfect, does a really great job and allows you to control how much ash you put on it, because all we really want is a nice thin layer. Technically, you can combine your salt with your ash and rub it all over your cheese at the same time, but that does get incredibly messy, and often people put too thick of an ash layer. So we're just going to dust this ash onto our cheese. Notice I'm doing half of it first, and then we're going to flip the cheese over and do the other half. Our cheese has been salted, it's been ashed, and it's now time to start drying. This is where we're going to dry the surface area of the cheese and allow that mold to start growing. This process doesn't take very long, and you definitely want to make sure you put something under your cheese. And I suppose I could have put my tray under that drying rack. I don't know why I didn't. But the temperature is going to be in the low 60s with an 80 to an 85% humidity. And you'll know it's done drying because the outside won't look so glistening by the time it's finished. So here are the parameters. We're going to keep it in there for about 24 hours, 55 to 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 to 85% humidity. And like I said, usually after about 24 hours, this is what your cheese is going to look like. It's going to have more of a matte finish. And if you notice that it's not drying out fast enough, you can always put a little computer fan next to your cheese, which will help it dry out. It's now time to decrease the temperature and increase the humidity as we ripen our cheese. And I like using this device from Govee to monitor the temperature and the humidity. So we're going to place that in with the cheese because what I'm looking for is high humidity. 95, 97%. I'm also going to put a little bag with a sponge in it with some water that's going to increase the humidity. And I'm going to cover all of that with just some Tupperware. I do want airflow, so notice the bottom is still wide open, and that's going to give me proper ventilation but maintain a really high humidity, and that's what that's going to look like at this point. Let me show you what the temperatures look like inside the cave real time. So this is on that Govee unit. The top section is temperature, the bottom section is humidity, and notice Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, the average temperature was about 59.6. And the average humidity Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday was about 84. So that's perfect for the drying phase of this particular cheese. Then we change the parameters by putting a Tupperware on top and a little sponge in there and lowered the temperature. So now you see Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the average temperature is 55 degrees and the average humidity is at 95 degrees. And that's all within that little mini chamber that we built. So this ripening stage is going to last for 7 to 10 days, and every day you want to turn your cheese just a little bit. That way the mold doesn't grow through whatever it's sitting on, which could eventually damage the rind. The temperature is going to be 52 to 55 degrees, and you're going to have really high humidity, 95 to 97%. This is going to help that mold really develop and grow really fast. Once the mold has adequately covered the cheese, you're going to take it out of your cheese cave, wrap it in some cheese paper, and then place it in a cooler fridge. So let me kind of show you what this looks like after a couple of days in our cheese cave. The mold is starting to grow through that ash layer. It looks beautiful. That high humidity is really helping that mold grow. After a few more days, notice how much it's been covered. Now remember, I'm turning this every day, whether I'm flipping it or just rotating it 90 degrees, and that's keeping that mold intact. And we're now about 8 or 9 days into it, and this is what it looks like for me. Your results may vary depending on the conditions of your chamber, but at this point, I find it to be sufficiently covered. It smells great. It looks great. Our mold layer is even throughout. That ash is just barely peeking out of the sides. So far, so good. I'm very pleased with how this looks. So we're going to take it out of the cheese cave, wrap it in some cheese paper, and then go ahead and place it into our home fridge. I'm using a 2-ply cheese paper, link below if you want more information. The first layer allows the cheese to breathe, and the second layer keeps its moisture level high so it doesn't dry out in the low humid refrigerator. So we're just going to place our Nerina on the shiny side of this 2-ply paper, fold opposite corners to the center, crease the flaps, and then bring those to the center as well, creating one point where we could just put a little piece of tape or something and hold it all together. If you'd like to see a dedicated video on how to wrap various types of cheeses, let me know in the comment section. Our cheese is wrapped and it's now time to age it. So we're going to take our wrapped cheese and place it in a cooler refrigerator. The easiest place to do that is in your home fridge. Temperature is going to be between 36 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and really no more than about 7 to 10 days. As we said in the beginning, Nerina is a relatively young cheese, but the longer you age it, the softer the cheese is going to get, almost to the point where it becomes oozy. So let's go ahead and take it out. It's been about 6 or 7 days, and we've let it come to room temperature. And that's one thing about this particular cheese. When you sit down to cut into it, you want to let it rest for about 2 hours on the counter. That's going to develop the flavors and the aromas, and let's give it a smell. Oh, wow. That's awesome. This actually reminds me of the growing fruit bodies of a young oyster mushroom as it's just beginning to develop. It has a very sweet, pleasant, mushroomy smell. I can't wait to taste it, actually. And it cuts very easy. It's a very soft cheese. And notice it's not oozing out. It doesn't start to ooze out until you get to roughly week 2 or week 3 in the aging department. And I love the contrasting between the white goat milk, that dark black ash line, and then coming back on top with that bloomy rind. It just looks absolutely stunning. And let's give this a little taste and see what it tastes like. Wow, that's incredible. This cheese is a little musky. It's bright with a hint of tangy. It's got butter notes and citrus notes, and the rind, sweet and floral with a very nice mushroomy flavor. The texture of the rind, though, is such a pleasant surprise in contrast to the creamy texture of the goat cheese. What a wonderful cheese, and I hope you get a chance to try it. If you have any questions on how to make the Nerina cheese, leave them in the comment section below. And if you liked this video or got anything out of it, a thumbs up would be helpful. If you're new to the channel, we first off want to say welcome. We post new videos each week, and each week is totally different. So don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. We appreciate you being here. We'll see you in the next one.